Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1004, written by Stretchy-Unicorn. We took a trip on a road that never existed. This happened around 6 years ago. My partner lived out in the countryside. Not much around but farmland, bridleways, and walking trails. The nearest shop was a petrol station, which was about a 6-mile, 15-minute drive. There were only 2 routes from his place to the shop, and we always took the same route. We would do this drive an average of 4 times a week. Even when not going to the shop, but driving out to the town, etc., this route was very familiar. It was pretty much one straight road cut through the woodlands and forest. Your typical winding country lanes where for half the journey through the woodland, you would be on alert for deer randomly jumping out in front of you just to scuttle off into the woodlands on the other side. So on this night, we're doing our usual drive to get snacks and chatting about everything and nothing. But halfway through the journey, the woodland opened up a sort of crossroads that I had never seen before. As we approached it, my boyfriend slowed right down. A car was approaching towards us from the left and going down the road we are just leaving. It passed us as we sat there. Then my boyfriend proceeded to the right, slightly, where there was a miniature level crossing for trains. In the moments from approaching this clearing to crawling towards a level crossing, I'm looking around everywhere trying to work out where we are and looking to my boyfriend to see his reaction. At some point I quietly said, "What's going on? What's this?" He didn't answer me, but it's possible he just didn't hear me or didn't say anything as I wasn't asking a direct question and was thinking out loud. As we approached, my boyfriend stopped talking and focused, and I mean really focused, and drove carefully and slowly. The opening of the level crossing had about 3.5 feet of heavy wooden slats, then the 2 rail lines, then another set of wooden slats as you left the rail tracks. He had a very low sports car, and you felt every hard bump as we entered and left. The car purred over the slats, and then thudded hard over the rails. He was visibly and verbally conscious and careful of every bump. As we exited, we came onto a ridiculously tight lane, which was so narrow that the foliage was touching either side of the car. After perhaps 30 seconds, the lane naturally widened out, and my boyfriend continued talking. I still had no idea where we were, so interrupted him with what I considered to be a rhetorical question. I said, "Hang on, we've never come this way before, have we?" Confused, he said, "Yeah, this is the only way we come." So we're going back and forth, and he's asking how I don't recognize where we are, and our tone between each other is getting heated as we both become frustrated with one another. I eventually say how I've never seen that level crossing before. At this point, he vocally stumbled on himself and very loudly said, "Level crossing? What level crossing? What are you on about?" This conversation is taking place as we're still driving, and after a minute, I recognize where we were, and everything was as it's always been. He goes into the shop, and I stay in the car, feeling frustrated and confused. Whilst he was in the shop, I'm running over our conversation in my head and slightly uncomfortable that he didn't understand what I was asking or how he didn't see the level crossing. He comes back, it's more relaxed, and I calmly insist that we must have come a different way, even though that made no sense to me as the last leg of the route was the same, and there's no other way to get to that particular road. To prove a point, which was irrelevant, he drove back the only other route. This confirmed to me that he had no idea what I was even asking and was clearly baffled by what I was suggesting. We got back, and eventually we let it go, and he laughed it off saying I imagined it or was thinking of a different place and had merged 2 memories together. So, over the following weeks, I scoured every single map I could find. Normal maps, ordnance surveys, Google Satellite and Google Street View. I even went on different train enthusiast websites where there are lists of every level crossing and what type of crossing they are, etc. There was no trace of it. We drove that route 2 days later and it was the same as it ever was. I had never seen that level crossing before and never seen it since. This area is known for the Bluebell Railway, so I even looked into old, disused railway lines, etc. I searched out everything you can think of solidly over a 2-week period and found nothing. I let it go for a bit and would search a few times a week, then a handful of times a month. After about 4 months, I had solidly scoured a 30-mile radius of that entire route. I did this to try and find even an illogical and irrational answer. For instance, that perhaps there was a diversion and we didn't notice it. But that's impossible, as there's nothing like that even on the longest diversions or detours. It simply didn't exist. We had been driving that route for around 3 years when this happened, and continued doing it for another 2.5 years after. I knew this area incredibly well through driving around and hiking. I will never understand what happened that night. I would love to know if anyone has experienced anything similar, or any suggestions as to what may have happened. Case notes are file 1004. We took a trip on a road that never existed. Yeah, you were very thorough in your attempt to explain away this anomaly or mystery, thinking about tree loggings, abandoned railway tracks, and all kinds of manner of weird and unusual explanations. But I think those would be rather rational. But to me, it's very clearly a glitch because there are no railway lines running anywhere nearby the route that you were on. So it's inexplicable. It's not like they just came by and removed them. Plus Google Maps, the satellite images, would have buffered images. They're not like updated every day or anything. I think it's every year, something like, or months. So you would have seen it. The only explanation to me is that you were temporarily in a new universe, one where there is indeed a rail line running in that area, with this extremely narrow road that is just bizarre. I've never been down a road so narrow that there would be foliage on each side that would touch the car. I guess maybe if it was just unkept, a completely abandoned road, but it's just this game we play. There are plenty of concurrently running simulations or versions of the game, and some are very different, like in this case. And just for a moment, you were occupied in that different universe. For some reason, I don't know why, there are crossovers sometimes. Quantum immortality is clear, but that's well defined. There's a single parameter. You have to die first, and then your soul moves over permanently, unless you die again. But in these cases, they're just temporary crossovers. Maybe there's places in the world where the membrane is thin enough where you just cross over. But why are you pulled back then? What is governing that action? It's unclear. But this would also explain why your boyfriend didn't understand what you were talking about, because for him, there was no crossover at all. It was just the normal road that you always take. There was no mini-level crossing, or railroad, or narrow road, nothing like that. Case file number 1005, written by elifacre, the Brightest UFO. A few years ago, I rented my father's second property. It's pretty far back in the woods off a very small 2-lane dirt road. One night, I was sitting in the main room of my recliner watching YouTube, with just the outside deck lights on. I started to get a feeling up the back of my neck, as you do when you're creeped out about something nearby or whatever. The next 10 minutes were strange. I have super blurry memories of slowly walking out the front door and down the deck steps, looking up at a giant white light floating above the cabin, and the second I looked at it, I collapsed on the bottom of the stairs and a giant, what seemed like, electric shock went through my body. I started crawling up the stairs and felt like every inch of my body was being pulled super hard back away from the front door. I don't remember if the area was lit up from the light, but it sure felt like it. The rest is a blackout, and I woke up standing at my kitchen sink with the water running hot all over my head and all the lights on in the house. Am I crazy, or did I experience something weird? Thanks. Case notes for file 1005, the Brightest UFO. No, definitely not crazy. The bright light is usually indicative of some kind of memory wipe, and the sense of confusion is also associated with this. Whatever form of memory suppression that aliens use when they abduct people isn't perfect. Yeah, it'll suppress your memories almost always, unless you actively try to go back and retrieve them via hypnotherapy. But just a normal experience, you'll feel confused, dazed, disoriented, perplexed, but you won't know exactly what happened. The memory won't be there. Sometimes they implant false memories, it seems, as well, but maybe that's more advanced and doesn't work on everyone. For everyone else, it's just a gap where you don't understand how you got from the porch to the kitchen sink with hot water running. But the only good news I can offer is that I don't believe these aliens are malicious. Maybe not exactly aligned with our ethics, to abduct someone is rather not exactly a good act, but they wouldn't think of it. The worst case, I think, is that they see us more like we would view ants, so they're not trying to exterminate us, they just don't really care, or think of us as that relevant or worthy of moral consideration. Hopefully not. One way or another, though, it's pretty clear that they want to understand us, physically at least, so they're abducting and studying us. In a way, indifference is almost more terrifying, but we can only speculate on that and just hope for the best. And now time for the quote of the day. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeeded. Michael Jordan. Now, isn't that something to think about? It's reminiscent of Thomas Edison and the 1,000 light bulbs. 999 times attempts to get it right. All failures. Every single time thinking, I'm pathetic, I'm worthless, I can't do this, there's nothing, it's hopeless. But it's not. If you just keep going, you'll eventually get there. It might take 10,000 tries, I don't know. The only guarantee is if you give up, you'll never be successful. So don't give up. Keep going. Success is right around the corner. Like the video, subscribe. Kinetic Symphony signing off.